Okay, thank you very much. Welcome everybody to the Towns Fund board meeting. We have got a very tight schedule today, in particular because we have the project champions who are going to be giving us updates on each of the individual projects. I am very, very conscious about the amount of work that we've got to get through at today's meeting. So can I please just ask that everybody does keep to the schedule. In particular, I've asked that the project champions limit their presentations to 5 minutes each. Okay, do we have any apologies for absence, Angelica?
Not that I'm aware of, but I do understand Councillor King has to leave early today for another meeting.
Okay, thank you. Any additional declarations of interest? We obviously have Michael's locking from previously. I take it that that's a no. Could we move on? You should all have received a copy of the minutes, and the minutes are all in the document pack. Does anybody have any comments that they wish to raise on the minutes from the previous meeting? Okay, so can we just take that the minutes are approved then, please? So if we can move on to item 4, which is, okay, can I propose that we accept the minutes are correct, please? Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Marie. Can we have those marked then that the minutes are accepted? Could we move on to item 4, the High Street projects for early delivery? Steve, are you presenting this one for us, please?
Yes, Chair, I'm happy to do so.
Thank you.
As requested by the previous board, we've investigated options for projects that could be delivered as part of High Street improvements using the 750,000 advanced capital funding provided by the government. We've looked at 3 projects which the board has actually previously discussed, which are the introduction of a public Wi-Fi system within the High Street area, the provision of secure cycle parking, and enhancing town centre bus halts, including locking in the positive changes created by in response to the COVID safety measures of relocating the bus halt and the taxi rank positions. And the report indicates that those are all feasible projects within the time scale and could all be delivered within budget. And I look forward to a steer from the board of whether they would wish to progress with those projects.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Maggie, you had your hand up.
Sorry, Seb, I'm having a problem with my toolbar, like you were, and I was putting my hand up to propose the minutes, but it didn't. I couldn't get my hand down again.
Okay.
So technical problems.
All right, no problem.
I can't get it back down again now.
All right, thank you. Okay, Keith Friedman.
Yes, hello. Just one small point there. Steve mentioned bus halts. Well, I've never heard of them. I've been using buses for the last 80 and more years, and they've always been bus stops. How has the terminology changed from being a bus stop universally to a bus halt? Is there a particular difference?
I confess, Keith, I've adopted that language from my county council colleagues who tend to talk about bus halts. I think they use the term to distinguish between the more verbal association of the bus stopping. So I believe it might well be the correct terminology is officially it is a bus halt that is designated, but I quite agree with you. Everyone who uses a bus calls it a bus stop, not a bus halt. And I would just like to assure you that the two, I think, are coterminous and there's no distinction between them.
Could we please have a bus stop then?
Councillor Michael Powell.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got one small addition. I obviously approve those projects. There's something we've been looking at for about 1.5 to 2 years, and I'd just like to suggest we consider the feasibility of this. You recall that the market, the permanent market with its stalls, was pulled down, probably more than a year ago. I can't really remember. We had considered having a marquee system, not a permanent one, but in a permanent site to enable us to enhance what the market does, and perhaps even at weekends to have a flea market or to have a special food market, farmers market, or to use it for other small events. So I call it an event marquee, and what the project would do would be A, to purchase the capital of the equipment itself, the marquee, and B, to provide the necessary power supply for lighting inside it and so on. I recognise that you have to look about the revenue money going forward, who's going to erect and not erect, and I think my suggestion is that we would use a company to do this, and they would charge for the use of the marquee, something like that. And it's something I believe, having had a quick word with one of our officers and talked to my colleagues, we think could be done.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. Would this just be a single large marquee, or would it be individual market stalls?
No, one largish 10-metre wide, 20-metre long marquee. We have done it before for like a craft fair, but it does cause a little bit of a problem because it blocks, and had it on the high street itself, but with all our other plans and so on, it would be better not to have it on the high street. It would be better to have it large enough for an event, but we're not talking a huge glamorous thing. It's a marquee for multiple events that you can have depending on the need. For example, at Christmas, they always have a charity fair as part of the light switch on, the Christmas lights. I know we're not doing it this year. That would be very useful for those kind of things, but it would possibly be, well, it's definitely feasible to be done if people think it's a good idea. So I welcome other people's comments.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. James Gregory.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Powell. I think that's a very worthy idea, and from an event point of view, I think it's got real merit. Very much an aside comment as somebody who rents a large number of marquees throughout the year. They do tend to be, a marquee is a natural magnet, can be a magnet for vandalism and causing other issues. As I say, I wouldn't want to stifle what is, I think, a very good idea from that Councillor Powell has highlighted. However, my experience of marquees is they need to be of a type and construction that are solid enough for their environment.
May I just answer that, Chair? I think the plan is they would have to be removed in the evening unless the event was on. It could not be left unattended, and we could not afford to always have security at the thing. It's more of a, 9 a.m. till 9 p.m. or something, and that's where you have to look at, you well know, their management of removal and storage of it.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. Councillor Bond?
There are two things. The first one is that I'd just like to remind the board that we are in fact creating an event space at the box office, quite near the Market Square, which I'm hoping will be able to fulfil some of the things that Mr. Powell would like to do. And secondly, I've actually long been interested in a portable bandstand, for want of a better word, somewhere for people to perform from, that rather than a portable covered area to go into, which might fit on.
Right, Denise.
You didn't hear anything I just said, did you?
We got up. I heard up into the portable bandstand.
Okay, you did then. That was all. So that's it. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Denise. Steve Birkinshaw.
Thank you, Chair. I think just to Councillor Powell's alluded to the fact that he's actually sounded this out with officers in advance, and I note that Councillor Hart is asking if we could come back with cost estimates. We've actually been able to acquire some cost estimates, which would be in the range of £20,000 to £25,000 for the purchase and the creation of installation footings. And just to pick up on Councillor Bond's point about the proposed box office event space, which clearly she will be presenting to us later, that will take several years to bring into being. I believe that we would be able to acquire this facility within the time frame, i.e. by the end of March, from which time, of course, it would be available, and it could actually help to build the interest and the engagement of cultural activities in the town centre that could then actually go on to occupy the box office space. So I think I was just suggesting, rather than seeing these two as being in conflict, I should actually think there's a synergy potentially.
Thank you, Steve. Could we also explore Councillor Bond's idea for staging as well whilst we're looking?
I regret to say no at this point, Chair, because I put forward 2 projects I think my team can deliver within the timescales, which of course do include some rather extreme. We have a lot of other demands on us, in particular in terms of delivering a town investment plan. Might I suggest that Councillor Bond works that idea up and brings to us a more concrete suggestion, because I don't actually know quite what she's intending at this stage.
Steve, I think, Denise, would you be happy to do that?
Yes.
Okay. Super. Thank you. Ian Sankey. Ian, you've got your hand up. Do you want to speak?
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, sorry, Chair. I wasn't aware of this proposal until now. I can certainly see the benefits of it, but if you approved it, I prefer to approve it in principle, because, as I said, I don't know the details. I have to look at the financing of it in terms of, whether it meets the dreaded capital revenue. And more importantly, if we did have such a thing, that, as Councillor Powell pointed out themselves, there would be a revenue expenditure for the borough involved in this, which we would have to look at. Very similar to if you approve the Wi-Fi, of course. there would be expenditure for the borough on the ongoing maintenance. So yes, I'm happy if members want to approve it in principle, but I would want us to look at the detail as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. Councillor Hart?
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with Ian. I think any of the things that we're wanting to agree, we have got to look at the implications on the Borough Council once this funding is spent, because it's not ongoing. This is just for the, you know, the things to be put in place. So, but I think that we could possibly work up and look at and speak with Mr. Sankey if it was possible, probably work up a business case so that if there were things that wanted to be that wanted to use that marquee, it could probably be negotiated that they could hire it, something like that. So I think there are possibilities around it, but as Mr. Sankey said, we do need to also look at that ongoing cost to EBC as well. But in principle, I think that we could, you know, certainly follow through on, you know, what it seems a good suggestion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can we move on to, well, Carol, you were proposing that we accepted those projects. Are you happy to propose that we accept the projects, including the performance marquee as well?
Yeah, I think that what I'm saying is they approved the previous projects that we've talked about. This one, in principle, it is a good idea. We just need the little background work doing on it before it's officially put in with the rest that we are agreeing. So it's sort of a yes in principle, but you know we do need the background work doing on it, as I say, from Mr. Sankey, and make sure that that isn't going to impose too much on the Borough Council and his revenue capital concerns.
Thank you, Carol. And do we have a seconder for that then, please?
I'll second, Richard.
Thank you, James.
Happy to second, Richard. Yeah.
Thank you, James. Okay, if we can move on then, please, to the budget update. Ian, are you doing this or is this Steve?
That will be Steve's, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Chair. As the board will be aware, in November 2019, the council received £162,019 of capacity funding from government to develop our town investment plan. In June 2020, this board approved use of that funding on consultancy support to develop the listed projects. We are basically reporting back on how funding has been allocated to those projects. That's in table 2. And you'll see from that report that we've actually allocated more than we have received in terms of that funding package. The additional overspend is fundamentally down to the requirement for additional traffic modelling to support Derby Road Junctions proposals, and we're currently in negotiation with the County Council to how we can fund that additional item.
Okay, thank you, Steve. The extra funding, have we actually spent more money than we've allocated to this then? So,
no, but not at this stage. That would be unlawful. I'm very aware of Mr. Sankey's watching me.
Yeah.
The terminology. Board members will be aware this is the second version of this report. And if you look at, if you were able to spot the difference, you'll notice that table 2 points to allocation. Now that actually is a mix of contracts we've agreed with a contract value, committed expenditure against purchase orders, and actual expenditure that's gone out of the account. So we haven't at this stage overspent, but what we have done is agreed in principle to a project brief from ACOM to investigate the options around the Derby Road junctions, which requires or ought to be supported by a traffic modelling proposal. and that traffic modelling proposal, as detailed in paragraph 4.7, would require an additional £21,956 of expenditure, and we're currently in negotiation with the County Council about how we will fund that additional element.
Okay, thank you, Steve. And that leaves enough funding left for actually the consultancy that you require for the writing of the tip?
That is written into table 2 on the second to last line, town investment plan. The town investment plan support from Arup, which is £20,000, £20,765, and that project has already been commissioned and is ongoing, and has started, and we are engaging with Arup around the support they're giving us on the town investment plan. So that is within there, and it's within the amount, within the 163,000. It's for traffic modelling that's the extra item.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, well, thank you for that report. Is there any comments that anybody wishes to make on that? Vaughan Morris?
Yeah, sorry, Richard. Just to say, it's amazing how much traffic modelling costs compared to the feasibility study for Derby Road junctions. It's almost half the cost. You know, I've just a comment really. Wondered if Steve might be able to.
Yes, it's eye-watering, Vaughan. We've engaged with this issue before. The traffic model is owned by a company. It was developed with public monies, essentially from Nottingham City, Derbyshire County, Derby City, and Nottinghamshire County transport authorities. But it's developed with a company called Sistra, and they own the model. And in order to, it cost over £1 million to develop.
Yeah.
And essentially, to that money gradually, it requires expertise to turn the handle on it. It's not a straightforward and user-friendly computer program that you just say, "Oh, I want to do this." So, and Sistra effectively control the access to that model, and this is the price for using it. I've come across this in the past. We used this model to ascertain the viability of traffic measures around the Stanton regeneration site. We used it to test the core strategy as a whole. It's used for all major transport projects within the region. The County Council's Highway Authority are quite rightly saying that they need to see what impact any changes that we would suggest on Derby Road junctions might have on the wider transport network before they would be able to support that. So the highways are an expensive item, and when you want to address them, these are the sort of costs that are incurred. But my impression from the board is that looking at a project which can improve matters around Derby Road junctions is seen as an important thing that we should address, and it's on that basis that we're suggesting that we should go ahead with that.
Yeah, thanks for that, Steve. Clarification, thanks.
Thank you. Steve, could I just ask, the capacity funding that we were allocated, did we ask for 162,000, or was that was just a figure that was given to us?
It was a figure that was given to us. All local authorities within a certain population bracket were awarded that sum. The £19 is indicative that the government started with a certain sum and then divided it up amongst a number of bids.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Do you need us to approve this, or is this just a report for our information?
It's for noting. I'm aware that previous board meetings have been questions about where are we with the funding, so it was an update for board members on where we are with that revenue support funding.
Okay. And will the council get that money back if we get from the town's fund money, or are you just writing that money off to the?
We all, sorry, Mr. Sankey,
Yeah,
I think would like to speak.
The answer is we won't get it back. But at the early stage, I discussed the issue with Steve, and the extra 9,500 or so, we thought it could be funded on our existing economic development budgets. It was an appropriate spend for that budget, so that's fine. But no, we won't get it back.
Okay, thank you, Ian. Okay, if we're happy then to move on, please, to the results of the project consultation. So, Steve, who's going to be presenting these, please?
Well, Chair, that's not for me to answer to. I haven't been coordinating the consultation effort.
Shall I say something? Hello, good morning, everybody. It's Colin from the.
I was going to say, Colin, you need to come in here, please.
Okay. Good
Thank
morning,
you.
everybody.
Thank you, Lorraine. Thank you, Colin.
Just to bring everybody up to speed then, really, the survey closed on the 23rd as required after 4 weeks. And we received to this survey 556 replies, which I can't say, I'm not disappointed. I was hopeful we would get closer to 700, but sterling efforts by the comms team, etc., and videos being made, it didn't happen this time. I think it's important to recognise that this was a 4-week period compared to the 6 weeks one that we had available for the vision survey when we got 587. So it's a reasonable return, really, given the length and the complexity as well, which I think is a factor between spotting the difference between the two surveys. I kind of hope the project champions have found the information helpful in the format that I sort of circulated it. I wanted it to be in a easily accessible and at a glance sort of approach, so that you could immediately start to see where people's thoughts were going or not going across the board. And I think it was mentioned at the last meeting that, you know, the early sort of assessment of the findings was showing that there is sort of support for the projects. What is quite clear, if you look just literally looked at the data and did no more than that, you haven't got any that have got drastically opposed, none at all. It would appear quite clearly there's more agreement for some than others as an initial assessment, but it does seem that, you know, in general, the sort of issues that were discussed in the survey have been accepted favourably. And can I just make a comment in relation to point 4 on the agenda item? And Ellie put my hand up. You talk about a project for Wi-Fi in the high street. There's a question in the project survey that asks about people's thoughts on that. And that was one point I was going to say, where, having said what I've said about support for the projects, what that particular question shows that people aren't sure about that, because all you've got is a 48, and overall, between this agree and somewhat agree, a 48% of the respondents suggesting that having Wi-Fi in the high street is something that they think is a good idea. And jumping into the qualitative comments, on more than one occasion, a respondent has mentioned, do we need to do this? Because 9 people out of 10, and that's not a statistically valid statement, this is a Collins statement, many people who are lucky enough to have a mobile phone have Wi-Fi as part of the contract. So I just thought I'd float that one. If we're going to go with that particular project in using that other source of funding and what have you, the survey said is not suggesting that's something that would be, they're not against it, but they're not as strongly in favour of it as they are other ones. So as I say, that's just one example and what have you. I am conscious of time. I'm quite happy to go through as much of the consultation detail as you want me to, but I respect what you were saying, Chair, about the pressure for the more detailed sort of discussion, which I kind of hope may well come out with regards to the project updates. Just another point, if I may, in relation to the previous meeting, we were concerned, rightly concerned, about the sample size the numbers and representativeness and what have you. Very, 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 very valid questions, and I wish I was pushing buttons and raising my hand in the office, but I couldn't get to talk to you about that. Using, you know, recognised software to calculate a sample size, and on the assumption, and I base this on a figure that was mentioned at a couple of meetings, that the population size is 44,000. If you put that particular figure in a 95% confidence level, which I'm sure you're all aware is being suggested that you, as close as you can be to this is a representative view of the overall population, and I'll explain a little bit more in a second. Put that into the system, it comes up with a sample size of 381. Well, I know, like you and I, that seems desperately low, but that is actually a statistically valid sample should we choose to have stopped at 381. So with regard to both the surveys, and I know we're talking about this one, we were well over that. It was about what did we get last time? We got 587 with the vision survey. Okay, so we can say with a degree of certainty we've got some representativeness with these responses. So I know it's important to allay these concerns. Likewise, if you use the figure of 556, you can similarly work out another important figure which has to be considered with the confidence level, and that's the confidence interval. And by that, it means if you get a figure of so many percent agree or with something or other, the confidence interval allows you, along with a 95% confidence level, that allows you to say within plus or minus of a certain amount, this would be what would be selected by the population. So, and in doing that, we can say on the 556, to some degree, because I mean it isn't. While it is science, it's not an exact science with 95% confidence. But the figures that you're looking at, plus or minus 4.13, I think it is. I'll just check the figures. But that is what you would get if we were in a very fortunate position to carry out the sort of survey that the census will be doing next year and interview everybody in what we are defining as Long Eaton. So I hope to give you a degree of sort of reassurance that there is some confidence in these figures. And I'm not just saying that because I'm precious about them. That is statistically a model that would stand some robust sort of examination. Having said all of that, what I would suggest is what we need to do, or what we could do if we needed to, is we need to, and I'm starting this work already, is look at the demographics, because quite clearly we've got a range of responses of ages from across the borough. What we need to do is compare that to the actual mid-term estimates that we can get from LGA, and then we can, if we needed to, we can start weighting the data. So I kind of hope that's a sufficient sort of introduction to the findings, and I'm more than happy to discuss either now or outside the meeting with anybody from the board, in particular the project champions, with regard to if they feel, can you tell me what this means in a bit more detail? Can you break this down by age? Because Lorraine suggested, and it's a very valid point, it might be useful to have a look at the data by age bands, not by the individual bands that are used in the survey. That's too many. We can collapse them into sensible under 29, 32, whatever, etc., etc. And I've had a quick cursory glance at running some stats like that. And yes, there will be some difference, but what we haven't got, and it's a bold statement, it's a sweeping statement, we haven't got for any of the decisions a complete no from under 29s compared to my age group of 50 to 60 or whatever it's going to be. So that's just an option should we need to crunch the numbers some more. That can and will be done. I didn't do it in the first time because I could have sent you report packs that were an inch thick, of which you probably would only use the first 3 quarters. So I'll leave it at that for the moment, if that's okay, Chair.
But thank you very much for that, Colin. In terms of the individual responses that we got to each of the projects, I think it would be useful if the project champions, who will be aware obviously of what the responses to their individual projects are, if they could reference those when they're actually presenting on the individual projects. Denise Bond, you've got your hand up.
I just wanted to say something about the Wi-Fi. That was something that I originally proposed, and I proposed it because in summer 19 I did a survey of the young people in Sawley when we were trying to put some youth provision into Sawley, and what they all wanted was Wi-Fi. I noticed that in the report, and correct me if I'm wrong, Colin, but something like 75% of respondents were over 50. So we're looking at a very old demographic, and that might make a difference to interest in Wi-Fi. Sorry, I'm describing myself as very old there within that. When we tried to educate the country during lockdown, we found that access to Wi-Fi was actually a major driver of inequality. My anecdotal evidence is that lots of young people don't have unlimited data on their phones. And that might also be true of a lot of less well-off people or less technically committed people. There must be some data sources on this, and maybe we can consult those before we make a final decision. Well, we may need to make a decision today, but I think we should bear those in mind and not just look at our consultation as representative. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. Lorraine Poyser.
Okay, thank you, Chair. And really, it's just to pick up what Councillor Bond has just said, and the sort of the little bit of a warning that Colin had already given on this data. This is only an indicator. You have to look further than this, and as Colin has said, we need to look at the demographics, which is picking up what Councillor Bond has just said. So for all of the project leads, this is the start of a 10. You need to dig a little bit deeper into this if it's perhaps not what you would expect to see. But we mustn't lose sight of the fact we have consulted the public. So we may have our own views, but ultimately we have to take some steer from what the public is saying. So that's all I want to say in terms of that. It is an indicator. It's like taking your blood pressure. It tells you that something might not be quite right, but it doesn't tell you what that is. You have to look a little bit further for that. And finally, what I want to say in terms of this is just one aspect of what we've done, this online survey consultation. Let's not forget that the promotional videos that Councillor Hart, yourself and the local MP Maggie did also had over 12,000 views, which was super. So it actually got in, and yours, Richard, my goodness, you're very popular in the local community. You know, had a lot of views. A lot of views. So we had over 12,000 views, and we had a 4-week media campaign, which obviously Steve supported our communications team with, and that's reached over 24,000 people. So we have actually got a wide reach, and this was a large, complex survey. And to get the responses that we got, I think, you know, it shows that our community are interested. It took a long time to fill in that survey, but we've got some excellent feedback that we can now use to help to develop those projects. That's all I needed to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorraine. Are the results of the survey available for the public to actually see?
All of the results from our consultation, we're very open about consultation, and Colin, once we've obviously got to the point where we've done all of those reports, those will be published, because that's the whole thing about consultation. They can go onto our website, we list all of our consultation activities, and we do give those results.
So do we have a time when those will actually be available then on the website?
I'll put that over to Colin.
Yeah, hello again. Yeah, they can go on straight away. With respect, I don't put anything into the public domain until it's approved to do so. I mean, if they could have been on from Tuesday, but I sensed it would need to be discussed here first. But yeah, I can get those on. I'll get those on today.
Thank you very much, Colin. Steve Birkinshaw.
Thank you, Chair. Having neatly sidestepped and said this isn't my item, I just thought I owed it to Lorraine and Colin to publicly thank them for the effort, work and professionalism they brought to this consultation process, but also to put it in the context of the town investment plan guidance, which requires us to engage the public in the development of our projects and to demonstrate that there is public support. And my clear conclusion from the work so far is that in our town investment plan, we now have statistically robust evidence that proves that there is public support for these projects. So for me, that is the standout finding.
Thank you, Stephen. Again, yeah, I'd like to just echo Steve's thanks. I think the fact you got such a big response to such a complex survey is excellent. Will Morledge.
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of very quick points. I would echo. I think it's a decent response actually for a survey, especially in these very odd times. But I think I think there is a really good point there, isn't there, about engaging the youth as we go. The youth, he said, engaging young people as we go forward. And maybe there is something about engaging with schools and college-age pupils, but to get their views, because they're going to be the people using the things that we build in 10, 20 years' time. But the specific point was, I think the County Council sits on data around broadband and 4 and 5G not spots. So I think if we wanted to kind of correlate that with the views of the survey on the wireless programme, that might be quite helpful.
Thank you, Will. Does anybody else want to raise any issues on the consultation before we move on? Okay, thank you very much. If we could go on to agenda item 7, the Town Fund project updates. I, in particular, am very keen to hear where we are on some of these. We're going to do these in alphabetical order. So first up is Councillor Denise Bond on the box office project.
Thank you, Chair. Can I have permission to share my screen? Can you hear me?
Hello, Angelica. Can we do that, please?
Yes, Councillor Bond just needs to use the toolbar on her screen to share. It's your permission that's required.
Permission, didn't you?
Yes.
Has that shared now?
Yes, it is, Councillor Bond.
Brilliant. Let me just try and put that onto full screen. No. Okay, it's not going to go onto full screen. So I'm presenting the box office project. So that's a proposal for a combined cafe, art gallery, and a small event space with a cinema. So what they've actually suggested we do is that we have the cafe at the front, the event space at the back, and then we have a 100-seat cinema upstairs. There's a big issue with the building being quite narrow. It's 11 metres wide, but 48 metres deep. So we've got a very long, thin building to deal with. Okay, so looking at the uses of the space, for the art cafe, they actually also want to put pictures around the outside of the walls that have been done by local artists and which are for sale. So they want to have a gallery, and also they want the cafe to be a hub. There was a project called Revive, which I think a lot of people might remember, that tried to bring people together, to bring artists together, and to make sure they had lots of information about all the things that were on, all the classes you could do, all the events that were on, and also help if you wanted to put on an event or create a class. So we're going to be asking quite a lot of the people who work in that cafe. I'd also like them to be selling tickets for the cinema. So the consultation has said that the cinema should be an appealing alternative to the commercial mainstream. So independent films, live streamed events, stuff for children and youth, there's quite a range of things we could do there. And also, I think we could maybe have twins that were linked for any town-wide events that we were putting on. And then at the back, there would be event space, which would be for hire, but also available for teaching and small groups and small performances where there would be seating, hopefully for 80 people. So that's what they actually would like us to do. Okay, so the cost, and I have checked with Richard that I'm allowed to show you this. They said it's going to be between £3 and £4 million. The costing they did came up to £3.6 million, but they said that that might need to be flexible. Okay, it's over £3,000 a square metre, so I'm a little bit hopeful that we might be able to bring that cost down during contracting, but it's hard to give a cost until you have a specific design. Okay, I'd like us to consider allocating any unspent funds from, because I'm going to ask you for amount of money and then try very hard not to spend it. If we do manage not to spend it all, I'm aware of some projects that other arts organisations, capital projects, have within Long Eaton, and we might, if we put a line in our budget saying that we would donate to those, we would fund those to an amount, you know, either a small amount or a large amount, depending on how much money we saved. That might be a way to make sure we used all the funding. They also suggest a 35% revenue funding for the first year, so that we can pay wages while we're getting going. I'm actually would suggest that 2% of the funding be revenue, because we are allowed a small percentage of revenue funding that would get us going for the first 6 months. Okay, so how much are we going to spend? They're suggesting 3 full-time equivalent staff, coming up to £95,000 with on-cost. About £50,000 in premises maintenance, which is important because when we do our design brief, we need to make sure we design a building that's easy to maintain and clean, so that going forward, we give the organisation the best chance of succeeding. And then they're saying we'll spend about £20,000 on sort of printing and toilet paper and things. Okay, supplies and services. There's a lot more than that actually, but consumables and services. Okay, so the income for the project, they're expecting £76,000 to come from the cinema, and that's by far the largest amount of income that we're looking for. And that actually, when you do the maths, translates to £1 per seat at 15 shows a week for 50 weeks. So that is actually not that much per seat. I mean, it may be that half the seats are full for those performances and we're asking for £2 a seat. And that is the profit margin they're looking for after they've paid the film. So I think there's, you know, there's scope possibly to make more on that. Okay. The catering at £20,000, they're looking for £60 a day. Again, not unrealistic. The other income, they haven't specified that that is, but I'm thinking of things like sales of pictures and things. The fundraising, project grants, event hire and classes, I think are less certain forms of income. Okay. But they're the projections that they've given. So I personally am going to ask that when we take this forward, we ask for a feasibility study on a larger cinema. I've done the maths and got out my protractor and realised that it is possible to get a 208 cinema screen into the space. There are some disadvantages, and obviously we need an architect to look at it properly, but I would like us to see whether we can get that larger cinema into the space, because I think it would make a way of increasing the profitability of the screen, and it might we may find that distributors won't give us new releases if we wanted to show some. And personally, I think that because I want to use the cinema to bring more people into the town, I want to be able to show some more popular films and some new releases. And for that to be economic, we may need a bigger screen. Okay, and also, you know, the more people we get in, the more cinema seats we sell, the more funding we get, and it is the biggest funding driver for this project. I'm running out of time. We've looked at the target audience. I'm looking for people who want to go out in Long Eaton, essentially. People who don't want to have a long journey home or expensive taxi journey. They want to walk or have a short, affordable journey home. People who, like teenagers who aren't allowed to go into the city, or people who don't really feel that comfortable travelling away from their hometown and would rather go out here. I'm competing with Netflix, really, as well as the people who want that arts house programming. I'm not going to, don't think we're going to try and please everybody all of the time. So I'm not advocating a multi-screen, but I would aim for an offer that over the period of a month would have something for everybody. I'm really hoping that we'll get more people to go to the cinema and get people who want to go out locally to go to the cinema, rather than competing with people who normally go out to the city for to see films on a regular basis. Oh, I'm not going to show you that screen. I think we would set up a charitable trust to run the company part of this, but not necessarily the building. The consultants have made it very clear that they believe that we have enough of an audience. Apparently, about 50% of the population is likely to consume the kind of culture that we're offering in Long Eaton, compared with 40% nationally, so that's good. And we've got 131,000 adults who live within a 15-minute drive, 157,000 people with children, and I'd like children to be going to our cinema. About 2.2 people go on about 2.2 cinema trips a year. So we only need about 15% of local cinema trips to make our provision viable, although I'd like to see more than that. But the consultants have concluded there's sufficient demand to support an arts centre. And that's it. Thank you very much. Sorry for overrunning that, Richard.
Denise, that was really, really good. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask Denise about the box office project? David Barradell? David, you're on mute.
Apologies. I think it's very laudable that Denise is looking at the younger element. I represent the U3A, which looks at the other age group, and a lot of our members attend meetings in Long Eaton, and I struggle to find venues. We normally have a monthly meeting at which we have about 100, 120 people. Currently we meet at West Park, we meet in the leisure centre there, which is not ideal, and we are looking elsewhere. There are very few venues around Long Eaton that could accommodate that sort of number in the levels of comfort that our members would look for. I note that we're looking at an event space of about 80 seats. Is it possible that that could be increased at all? And I fully appreciate that I'm looking at a fairly specific number of people on a sort of one-off basis. But as I say, they are members of our community, and there's nowhere really suitable in town for that sort of number of people to meet.
If you're meeting on weekdays in the daytime, you could possibly sit in my lovely 200-seat cinema auditorium, because we want to be able to use it for speeches. So if that 80-seat venue, if we couldn't make it big enough for you, you know, I'm sure we could accommodate
that's
it.
fine. I mean, we have looked at the Duchess Theatre, and we can accommodate, they can accommodate us, but the difficulty there is getting the seats in place, setting the building up. and the fact that there are no staff in the Duchess Theatre to do that for us, and we're quite happy to pay for that service, but there's just no staff around. I note that you're talking about 3 members of staff there. If staff would be available, then I'm sure that if that facility is there, then it would be ideal.
The thing is, I'm not planning on collapsible seats. Initially, I thought collapsible seats would be a really great idea. But actually, because the way this works, if you've got the seats permanently set, you can do things underneath the seats, whereas you have to go all the way down to the ground to have collapsible seats. It might work better for our building to have permanent seats anyway. And there would be a staffed cafe that would be open in the day. So there would be somebody in there. But I think we trust the U3A to go into the cinema auditorium and supervise.
Absolutely. We have to be aware that 1 or 2 people are sort of not as mobile as others. So if the seats are banked, there would be an issue. But
there would
if
have
we
to
can
be
do
disabled
something.
access. And it's a lovely illustration of the sorts of things we could use this property for. Thank you.
Thanks, Denise. Thank you, David. Steve Birkinshaw.
Just very briefly to say, Chair, that and I commend obviously Denise's role there and presentation, but just to point out that it was suggested that we could use underspend from the money. I'd just like to remind all project leads, we don't have any money yet. The purpose of the town investment plan is to try to persuade government that there's a good case to invest in Long Eaton and give us this money to deliver specific projects. So I think it's unlikely that we'll be able to say, if there's any underspend, government will take that back, because what government will agree with us is to deliver a specific project. So just to remind us that we don't have any money. We're bidding for money through a town investment plan. Each of these individual projects, we're saying to government, please fund this individual project because it would help us achieve our positive vision for this town.
In that case, because you've given me a wonderful opportunity, Steve, to say something I have missed out saying. I've had a letter from Mike Beetham, who runs the Chatsworth Theatre. He has 3 projects that he'd like to do. He's got to replaster his ceiling because a few years back, plaster started falling on people's heads in theatre auditoriums, so everyone's got to check their ceilings. And that's going to cost him £40,000 to £50,000. He wants to redo his sound and video system so that it's compatible with people who are training in colleges to do music technology and so on, so that people can come for placements there, and also to make it better for this theatre. And he wants £30,000 for that. And he also wants to, in the longer term, he has to replace his heating system. We might want to look at whether we can actually, I think that came to £130,000 in total, whether we could add a line in our bid for that, because we are supposed to be supporting and enhancing our existing infrastructure. And he has written about the impact of COVID and how that's going to delay these projects because of the financial loss. And that's something I think that they would be really happy to fund, and it's not a lot of money. On our grand scheme of things, it's not. Okay.
Thank you, Denise. Steve, do you have an answer for Denise on that? Is that something for Ian, perhaps?
Well, I think this is really sort of back to the board. In essence, we have gone through quite a lengthy process of developing a town vision, of identifying projects that will help us to deliver that vision, of consulting the public on that vision and consulting the public on those projects, and of commissioning consultant reports to give us professional advice that goes beyond our informed opinions in order to justify to government why we think those projects ought to be backed. And we are in the process of writing a town investment plan on that basis. If the board wants to back additional projects, then you need to find additional resource to basically provide the evidence base for those projects. but I bet there's nothing to stop you as a board from doing that. But I think have already indicated that there is unlikely to be any spare capacity within the Borough Council's team to work up any more projects. And I might suggest that though members of the board might feel what the government is saying, please spend some money on whatever you want, what the government is actually saying is, we want to make a contract with you that will deliver something that that we think is actually delivering an enhancement to the town. I think Denise's point about providing support for a COVID hit business definitely will address where the government is coming from on this. But I think the weakness of the approach is we're asking the government to fund something we've already got. So we're not actually offering them anything new. But that's, I know that there's appetite in the board to consider matters, but I think what I'm trying to suggest to you is it might be a little difficult to fit those into the town investment plan at this stage. But if other members want to sort of put that work in, then it's the board that improves the town investment plan. And if you want additional matters in the town investment plan, that's up to the board.
Thank you for clarifying that, Steve. Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Chair. A really quick one. I really do like the whole concept of a multi-use venue, but I have a question about the consultants. Did they do any analysis on why our existing cinema failed, which was a 2-seat, quite big screen cinema? And did they also take into account the fact that if you're going to have really up-to-date, very modern films, the fact there's a brand new cinema well under construction, only 3-4 miles away in Beeston, and I just feel it's a bit heavy on cinema as opposed to multi-use. That's it. Thank you. That question.
Thank you, Councillor Powell.
Okay. In answer to the question, no, the consultation didn't look at why previous cinema failed. I personally, and maybe this is something I need to look into actually, but I don't know how to find it out, but I could maybe look at, there might be some accounts filed with Companies House or something that I could look at. My personal experience of that cinema was the screen was very small. So I went there, the screen was too small. I didn't go again. One of the reasons I would like to change the proposal that the consultants have done is I think I can only see that doing it that way, they'd have to have a very small screen. I think screen size is very important. If I'm going to go and see an old black and white movie, I'm going to see it not on the television because I want to see how it looked on the big screen. And if the screen is small, that's not going to do it for me. So they had the screen was too small at the last cinema that I went to in Long Eaton. But also I think that it depends as well how much debt you've got to pay back. If you've got a lot of rent to pay or a big loan to pay that you took out to create the cinema, then it's a lot harder to survive. But I will attempt to find that out and report back to the board on that because it is a very interesting and important question. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. I'm very conscious that we've had 20 minutes on the box office, and we've got another 6 presentations to go through. So I think it is important, if possible, that we keep things as brief as we can, please. Maggie Throop.
Thanks, Chair. It's really a quick point about the Chatsworth Centre. I love the place, but I don't think government would be very amenable to funding the work that they've asked to be funded through this mechanism. I think they need to look for other mechanisms.
Thank you, Maggie. Ian Sankey.
Chair, just a question really for Denise Bond, and I've not seen it yet, Councillor Bond, but obviously we're talking about setting up a charitable trust. We just need to think about whether that in setting that up, and if it takes on any liabilities or things, where would the council sit in that? Would we be required to underwrite anything? That's just a question. I don't know yet.
I have a slide with the answer to that question. I didn't show it to you because I was advised that it might be commercially sensitive.
Oh, right, okay, perhaps not then. Okay, we can talk about it perhaps outside the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Will Morledge?
Thanks, Chair. It was just really to follow up Steve's point, and that is, if we're thinking about adding additional projects, it would be really helpful for me to get a clear sense of, are we talking about additional projects for the money that's available now, or official projects that go into the longer term plan that we can then take our time to sequence and work out where other bits of funding would come from? I'm sure it is clear, but it's just to help me organise things in my mind.
Thank you, Will. I would like, please, thank you very much for that, Denise, and for all the questions on that. I would now very much like to move on to the next project, please, which is Galaxy Row and James Gregory.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for handing to me. Galaxy Row, significant activity with regards to the Galaxy Row proposals since the last board meeting. I would like at this stage to thank the Chair, Oliver Dove, Mr. Birkinshaw, Steve Birkinshaw, and of course Lorraine and Colin for their input and their support so far. The October 2020 consultants report is worthy of praise. It is clear that the brief was well communicated to the consultant prior to investigations being started. The consultant has made significant efforts to understand Galaxy Row and the wider context of the Long Eaton Town deal bid. Once again, I'd say that is commendable. The consultant's review supports the opinion and I think the approval of this board for the proposed site utilisation to residential and a small amount of commercial. The consultant's report investigates the scope of the development zone. A realistic development zone at this time is considered to be an amalgamation of the former Galaxy Cinema, the former ATS Euromaster, number 43 Derby Road, and the former Stage 1 nightclub. We have to be realistic. Negative land value was always going to be an issue with this project and the associated proposals. This is what has led to the site being left to decay. The consultant's report confirms this and offers a range of values depending on scheme type and style, effectively a range of negative land values. Conversations are ongoing between the consultant and the landlords of the former Galaxy Cinema, former ATS Euromaster, number 43 Derby Road, and the former Stage 1 nightclub. Compulsory purchase could be considered as a method of purchase if required. I have met with Oliver Dove twice, and an additional meeting has taken place between Richard Ledger, Oliver Dove, the consultant Keith Thomas, and myself. The consultant is to forward additional briefing information to me, which will reflect this week's discussions. I will then be able to give a further update to the next board meeting. The board should be realistic as to the challenges of Galaxy Row and sympathetic to the economic challenges of this project. Other options for this site are limited, and the vision of decay at the gateway to our town will only continue to grow unless this opportunity is taken. This is a statement problem to be solved by a statement project. With regard to the consultation data, in terms of Galaxy Row, the public are supportive that the site should be redeveloped. The public are broadly supportive and have opinions on what the site should be developed for. However, there is strong support for the proposed redevelopment with regards to residential. Well, thank you very much, Chair. And once again, thank you to all of those who have supported the investigation so far, the consultant, the officers, and all involved have been excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Does anybody have any questions for James, please?
I do, please.
Okay, Councillor Bond.
I'm interested in, like, is this just what? So am I correct in thinking you're just looking at one scenario, which is the ATS, the garage, the stage 1, and next door, and the Galaxy? So we're just looking at developing those 3 sites at the moment. That's question 1. Question 2 is how many flats would there be? And question 3 is what would the loss per property be?
Well, thank you for the question, Denise. Well, 2 specific sites have been considered. The quantum of both of those sites forms what I believe we are and have been describing as Galaxy Row. The economics of these proposed projects are challenging. We have at this stage, where it's important to stress, no decisions have been made. The consultant is advising that a realistic development zone in terms of what we are trying to achieve by way of coming back to the original issue of the derelict Galaxy Cinema and provide additional accommodation within the town. The consultant is advising that a realistic way forward is to assemble the 4 sites that I have mentioned. Other zones have been looked at in detail in the consultant's report, but at the moment, in terms of using resources correctly, we have asked the consultant to further consider the 4 sites mentioned. Okay. In terms of the number of properties, there are a different numbers of properties depending on what option we go for. A subsidy would be required for each of those properties. I'm not keen today, whilst I have great confidence in the consultant's figures, I need to do more work. I have asked that more work is provided on those. I'm not in a position to get drawn into them today, but there would be a subsidy required for each of those residential apartments to make this project feasible.
I'm not happy with that answer. We need to be told what the subsidy would be.
I think
even if we have to close the meeting in order to tell us what the subsidy would be, I asked at the last meeting whether we could be forwarded the reports from the consultants, and we were told that we could see the reports from the consultants. We haven't been shown them, and we don't know what the loss per property would be. Now, there was something put on the internet from years ago where there would be 47 flats on that property. The cost of £5 million, 47 flats would be £100,000 per flat, when the flat's only worth something in the region of £100,000. So that's in addition to what the flat would be worth. I would like to know whether £100,000 loss per flat, in addition to the retail value of the flat, is a realistic ballpark figure for me to be looking at, or am I way out?
I think there is a loss to each of those flats. Are you way out? No. There is a subsidy required, and we will bring that information to further board meetings. However, at the moment, we have asked for additional information to enable us to present that to the board.
Okay, and time is running on. If we present it when it's too late to pull out, £100,000 per flat is a lot of money, and I'd like to clearly say to the board that I'm very concerned about that.
Thank you for your concern, Denise, and those have been noted. And thank you very much for your presentation, James. Does anybody else have any further questions for James Gregory about Galaxy Road? Okay, well, next up is me, and I'm going to be talking about the canal bridges. I'm just going to share my screen with you. Can everybody see that now, please?
Yes, Richard.
Okay, so we got a firm of consultants in to look at the viability of putting 2 canal bridges across the Erewash Canal, one at Broad Street and one at Britannia Road. I have in the past made it clear that I wasn't terribly impressed with, it wasn't the best consultant work that we've had. The bridge at Britannia Road, the work done by the consultants I think is perfectly fine on this one. It's a functional proposal, and the consultation data came back pro 54% and against the new bridge at 30%. There were also actually quite a lot of comments in the comment section, all of which were in favour of the bridge at Britannia Road in terms of improving access into the town centre. If we go to the second bridge, which is, for in my opinion, the one that has the potential to make the most difference to the town, which is the Broad Street Bridge. I think that the Broad Street Bridge is absolutely critical to linking West Park with the town centre, because it is the obvious way to move from the town centre into the park. The survey results 67% in favour of replacing the bridge, 17% were against, and there is a lot of support in the comments around the survey that people were concerned not to lose the bridge at Broad Street. I'm actually not at all a fan of the proposed bridge that came from the consultants for this position. It treats the canal as a barrier rather than something that we should be enhancing. It doesn't give any access to the canal on the West Park side. As a cycling route, it becomes a convoluted route to get over, and is actually a lot more difficult to cross than the existing bridge. It requires the purchase of part of the car park next to the Sankey building, and it does actually also block access to an entrance into the Sankey building. So I would like to look at and explore other possibilities for this. Now, we put a question in the consultation about whether people would like to see use of the canal side at West Park, and that came back with an approval rating of 78% in favour and 10% against it. Now, the opening up the West Park to the canal, I think, gives us an absolute fabulous opportunity to create something which is really dynamic and different within Long Eaton, and actually would become a destination that people would choose to go to. So a place where people would want to stay, where we could run activities, which had a sense of its own identity, which would also link with a green route along Broad Street into the town centre. I've spoken at length with the Canals and River Trust, and they are actually very keen to work with us to come up with something that is beneficial for the Erewash Canal. And we have to remember that the canal isn't just about boat users. It's also about people walking along the canal. It's about the education, and it's even just about sitting alongside it. These images have actually come from the Canals and River Trust. So Port Loop is a, if I go on to the next slide, Port Loop is in Birmingham, which is a parkside canal setting. We also have Hackney Wick, which is in London. Now this is a basically a restaurant on a boat with canal side seating, so it becomes a place, a destination. And this was actually rated as the #1 restaurant in London for 2019 to 2020 by TripAdvisor. And this is all something that is easily achievable in West Park, and I think would make a massive difference to the town. There are also the fact that if we're putting outside space next to a canal, it does give us a fabulous opportunity for some really good green projects, in that we could actually have outdoor heating for the outdoor space, which is driven by a water source heat pump. You've got a massive heat sink in the canal, and we can just be taking the heat out of there, and it actually becomes a flagship green project as well. The other thing that we could do is that we could actually have a launching point for kayaks. We could have paddle boarding, kayak hire, and get kids involved and actually use the canal itself. And again, the Canals and River Trust are very, very keen to work with us to be able to deliver something like this. Last one is just an aerial shot. So we've got the existing Broad Street Bridge at the bottom. My proposal ideally would be to replace that bridge with a flat moving bridge. There are concerns obviously around movable bridges, but there is also space at the top, just south of the lock gates, where we could put a fairly simple fixed bridge across, so that if the movable bridge were up, there was an alternative route to cross the canal onto the towpath. And we would then open up the west bank of the canal into West Park, so that we've actually got some waterfront space in the town. That's me done on that. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Okay, Maggie Throop. Maggie, you're on mute.
Sorry, I thought I turned it off. It's my bar that's a bit faulty today. So is that better?
Yeah.
We have Sea Scouts not far from the Broad Street Bridge. So there's youth groups already that use the canal. So I think this will only enhance their usage and widen up the usage to much wider groups. So I think it looks like a really good project.
Thank you, Maggie. Vaughan Morris.
There we go. Sorry, Richard. Yeah, it looks great. Your thinking is great on it, and the only slight positive, if you like, about the consultant's design at the moment is it does slow cyclists down, because I think wherever there is a crossing, things have got to slow down because of pedestrians and cycles. And but I think your idea of a flat, very infrequently movable bridge is good, and possibly Are you thinking that there would be also a fixed bridge near the lock as well?
That is something that I've spoken about with the Canals and River Trust. They actually quite like the idea of having a bridge at towpath height, because what it would actually do is create an enclosed space on the canal. So if you were to have, say, younger children using it for kayaking or paddleboarding, whatever, then it actually just create a bounded space on the canal that they could work within.
So would there be? Are you thinking there would be two bridges there, one a movable bridge and one a fixed bridge nearer the?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just how we get to that is the is the next question, but I'll leave that one with you.
All right. Thank you, Vaughan. Councillor Pitt.
Thank you, Richard. It looks fabulous. I think if we could implement this project with your vision, it would be very popular indeed. I've got two questions. The movable bridge, what would be the revenue implications of that? How much would it cost? And I think it might be actually the county council or the borough council, I'm not sure. And also the fixed bridge, would that be a cycle bridge or just a foot bridge?
The fixed bridge would be both a cycle and a footbridge. The advantage of putting that up at the lock is that you don't actually need such a steep ramp, because you've already got the height, because the towpath is already several metres higher than it is at the position where the existing Broad Street bridge is. The comment about maintenance costs for the bridge is obviously a very relevant one, and something that has to be looked into. Steve Birkinshaw.
Thank you, Chair. I just think I do need to re-emphasise that the practicability of a level moving bridge is not yet proven. There would be revenue implications which would have to be investigated. I've received a letter today from the owners and operators of the site involved, who have reminded us that they have a HGV loading bay that runs under the existing bridge that is unlikely to be compatible with a level access in that location. However, the precise decision on the type of bridge I don't think is prejudicial to the development of the town investment plan at this stage, because what I'm minded that we will commit to is to commission an appropriate bridge design. But we have got an extensive body of evidence on what we can achieve in terms of the bridge design here. We are not in a position to submit a TIP that says this will be a level moving bridge at this point, but I'm a note that the issue is open.
Thank you, Steve. Do we have any other questions on this? Okay, thank you very much. If we could, oh yeah, sorry, Vaughan.
Sorry, just the Britannia Road Bridge. A lot of, well, quite a few respondents were confused, and they thought the Britannia Road Bridge was going to supersede the Broad Street Bridge. Just to clarify, we're talking about two different bridge situations, aren't we? And we want to do both.
Absolutely, Vaughan, that's correct, yes.
Thanks. I would like to see the Britannia Road proposal in a bit more detail, if possible.
I'm happy to share that with you, Vaughan.
Thanks. And the other thing, just to mention, in terms of West Park, the canal waterside, I can just envisage it extending into the park as a boardwalk almost, with so we don't interfere with the flooding capacity of the park underneath it, if you see what I mean.
Absolutely, Vaughan. Yes. Yeah.
I'm all for that. Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So if there's nothing else on that, if we could move on, please, to Michael Locking to talk about Forbes Park. Michael.
Thank you, Richard. As you know, Long Eaton is characterised by its manufacturing heritage and presently by bespoke upholstery manufacturing businesses, and it also has a variety of other businesses. And as a result, all factories in the town are occupied and there is no land available for growing businesses to expand into. There's huge demand in Long Eaton for industrial units of between 2,000 square foot and 5,000, and it would be good if there were more larger units in the town for businesses that grow. This very high demand has existed for at least 10 years. There are already cases where businesses have not been able to come to Long Eaton because of a lack of premises, and this will only get worse if HS2 carries out its plans to demolish industrial sites already in the town. The only significant site in Long Eaton that is appropriate for industrial development is Forbes Park. It has been left undeveloped for at least 15 years, and in the past, inquiries to the landowner about using the land for industrial buildings have got nowhere. The current position, the land is owned by Clouds Developments UK Limited, a nationwide property development company with net assets of approximately £225 million. There are three planning applications currently being considered by Erewash Borough Council that between them cover the whole site. They were lodged in January and April this year, and mainly are for industrial units of between 2,000 square foot and 5,000 square foot, with 3 larger units and 4 retail units with offices above. These are still being considered by the council. So the reason this is a project is, while these applications have gone in, we are still concerned that the landowner is not going to rush to get any development on this site because it may be in its financial interest just to leave it as it is. Possible uses for the site, it's been suggested that this could be a site for the HS2 construction compound, and this would save factory units on Meadow Lane from being demolished, where approximately 400 people currently work. However, it appears that Forbes Park is not suitable because the current active low-level railway line will be between the compound and the construction work. In other words, this low-level line runs between Forbes Park and where HS2 would be built. It's also been suggested that this could be a suitable site for a supermarket such as Lidl, although it's questionable whether it could be considered to be within walking distance of the town centre. Development. This development of this kind is also contrary to Erewash Borough Council's planning policy, which does not approve of out-of-town shopping centres. Alternatively, the land can be used for industrial units in line with the current planning applications. It's likely that such units would be too expensive for local upholstery businesses, but there is likely to be sufficient demand from other businesses to ensure that these units were occupied. And if other businesses in the town move to this site, it could free up older premises for upholstery manufacturers. It is a stated aspiration of the town deal team, and it's going to come up later, to close the low-level railway line. And this might appear possible to overcome the main problem of using the Forbes Park land for the compound. However, the low-level railway line would have to be removed before significant construction work could be commenced on HS2, and this would require the cord to be constructed between the high-level line and the Nottingham Derby railway line before HS2 started construction work. It would appear that the chances of Network Rail achieving this are very remote. We've previously had lots of comments about getting Network Rail to do anything being difficult. It also appears that HS2 Limited considered that the Forbes Park site is too small. It is not part of the land that has been safeguarded by HS2. If the land were reserved for an HS2 compound, it would remain unused for many years, as the chance of HS2 construction commencing in Long Eaton in the next 5 years is remote. The idea of it being used for a retail store, it's not clear that there is any demand for a single retail store being situated at a site like Forbes Park. It is neither in the town nor an out-of-town retail park, and obviously it's also contrary to the local authority planning policy. Given that there is a desperate shortage of industrial land in the town, there is no reason to believe that planning permission would be granted for a retail development on the site. Looking at the consultation responses, it indicates that 77% of respondents would like Forbes Park to be brought into beneficial use, and 53% of these respondents would like the land to be made available for use by local businesses, and 35% would like the land to be reserved for an HS2 construction compound. Quite a few of the additional comments asked why the land could not be used for HS2 first and then by local businesses. Other comments mainly related to expanding the Forbes Hole local nature reserve. So we're looking at a question of what is the case for spending money on this site. The site has been unused for over 15 years, and the town has a desperate shortage of employment land, i.e. industrial land. This site is ideally placed for additional employment land. If public money could unlock the land, it would be money well spent. Another reason for spending public money on it is if this land could be retained for use as the HS2 compound, it could save the demolition of factory space where 400 people currently work, which should reduce the amount of construction traffic near the centre of the town. Another reason, it would increase the chance of being able to have good access to the land currently being occupied by a railway line. This would enable that land to be used for industrial properties. Finally, purchasing the land would thus greatly control over the site of industrial premises that would construct on it. We can have a positive impact on what it could look. The suggestion on the site is that the current appears to have constructed industrial on the site, and capital funds fees suggested with planning development money. So it would be unfortunate to land the quite correctly in compound and then development years of handle. Similarly, then be able to people that could learn well and get pushed. The last
can we interrupt?
Michael,
can't hear it.
Michael,
the last 2 or 3 minutes, I'm afraid. It's all breaking up.
Michael, your sound quality is very poor, and in the past minute or so, we're no longer able to understand what you're saying. I wonder if perhaps if you turn your microphone back on and back off and back on again.
You might want to try turning your camera off, Michael. It will increase your bandwidth.
Michael, we still can't hear you, unfortunately. Michael, can you hear us?
Probably no.
Right, well, it looks like we've lost Michael Lucking. What I suggest we do is we move on to the High Street and Councillor Dan Pitt. If Michael can log out of the meeting and then log back in again, and we'll see if we can then rejoin him. But for the time being, if we could go on to the High Street and Councillor Dan Pitt, please.
Vaughan Morris, West Park was before me, I think, or I can go now.
Sorry, Dan, I completely missed that. Yes, my apologies. Vaughan, over to you for West Park then, please.
Right, thank you. I thought I was missing out then.
Yeah.
I've got no PowerPoint presentation, but I met with Steve yesterday to get up to date and exchange views. So West Park, the main project is the improvements to the event space, and the questionnaire revealed 64% support for improving the event space. Actually, Friends of West Park have done their own little survey, and we got 56.4% saying yes. Slightly different because there was also on the main questionnaire there was a I don't know, unsure choice, so you can't quite. I think there is support for the event space to be improved. So the idea is basically replacing what is there at the moment. It's a stoned up kind of emergency overflow car park, but to provide about 200 tarmacked car spaces, which it's not just an overflow, it could be used day to day by the leisure centre and the park visitors. There would be services, electric supplies and a water supply. Quite how many points, is a detail. So, but the whole car park would be connected by a new path going alongside the embankment to the existing car park, with some steps up to the top of the embankment and then back down the other side of the embankment for the more able-bodied users. Details have still got to be obviously worked out. It's a work in progress. I questioned a lack of trees, but I think I was told trees might create problems with flexibility and sight lines if there was an event on and you wanted to watch from your car. There's a reason to keep it clear. 2 rows of lighting columns, so it would be lit. Again, I thought about that, but then there could be a nighttime event. So I think we need that. Again, I queried the tarmac, whether it could be porous tarmac, but that would clog up when the park floods. On the occasion it does. There's a central footpath running up through the car park as a refuge for people getting out of the cars. That's about it. And I think that figure that was given by Steve yesterday was 600,000 as a ballpark. I don't know whether we should talk figures, but because estimates can become quotations. So it's roughly that kind of figure. Now, while we're in that area, the leisure centre want to extend, or shall we say the operator, Legacy Leisure, want to extend the building at the front to form a cycle hub. And they were originally going to fund it 50% themselves and 50% from British Cycling. British Cycling funding is still there, but their Legacy Leisure are having difficulty funding the other 50%. I did look, just out of interest, Legacy Leisure are a registered charity, started from the time of the last Olympics in London, but I hear on the grapevine this morning their annual income is £40 million. So it's a great idea to have a facility for cycling, and my initial thought was, is West Park Leisure Centre the right end of town? Is it taking something away from the town businesses? and I think it will do, but they could work together. I think it needs a partnership, because if we took away, say, the maintenance of bikes from the leisure centre business, or yeah, it is a business, and say to protect a business in the town centre, a cycling shop, say, they would still, for these this cycle hub, they hire out bikes, so they'll have to repair their own bikes and maintain their own bikes, and it would be very difficult to police whether they were maintaining visitors' bikes or whatever, you know. So there's a big question about it in my mind. In the questionnaire, the support for the cycle hub was 46%, and the extension, just as a more detail, the extension is a wraparound extension at the front of the building facing the car park. It has a large meeting room, what they call a Watt bike hub, and bike storage. Again, I worry what kind of complications there will be wrapping around the existing building. In one aspect, it gives you a chance to brighten up a 50-year-old building, but I'd worry about building where there are services and drainage, and more than likely there'll be diversions of like gas mains and things. We don't know the details yet, but in the region, money-wise, up to 300,000. I'm supposed to be kind of the project champion on it, but I'm having second thoughts as to whether it's the right place. I can see for the West Park Leisure Centre, it's a great idea, and it involves the community. Though it'll encourage more cycling in the park, which I don't particularly like. I'm not sure how well, 46% is not a great support percentage, I would say. Obviously, I think it needs talking about. Anyway, we can have questions later. Just save time. The biggest project on the West Park that got 70% support in the questionnaire was about lighting additional paths, and the council have produced a plan showing where the lights are at the moment and where lights would be provided to form a circuit around the park, so that you could walk around the park in artificial light if you want to. Sorry, and also the King Street entrance that doesn't have lights at the moment. At the same time, we could provide lights for that kind of dogleg path to King Street, and also at the other end of the park, the formal entrance from the Robert Bakewell gates onto the park. That doesn't have lights at the moment, so we could provide lights there. A little side effect, positive, would be as the new lighting circuit goes around the park, we could tap in to the bandstand and provide power to the bandstand for more events, concerts there, and of course, forming the loop. It would be good for people taking exercise, walking, running, cycling even. A friend of ours cycles around the park 2 laps a day, and I worry slightly from the park user viewpoint in that one of the dreams, I suppose it was, or a target that was in their feasibility study was to emulate the park run popularity, which has up to, well, more than 500 people in good times running around the park for half an hour or an hour. And what I took from the feasibility study was, yeah, wouldn't it be good to have a park run style cycle exercise session around the park? It's a little bit.
Thank you, Vaughan. I believe Steve Birkinshaw's got a question that he would like to. Can we just let him come in and ask that, please?
Yes,
okay,
please.
Steve.
Yes, please. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Vaughan. Actually, just a couple of clarifications, Vaughan. In the first instance, there is not £150,000 of British cycling money available to support the Cycle Hub project. That bid to British Cycling failed, which is why we have an off-the-shelf ready project that we can input into this scheme.
Sorry, misunderstood that yesterday.
That's quite all right, Vaughan. But I thought it would also be useful just to talk about the relationship between the private sector and the town's fund, because the comments, not just from yourself, but also from Councillor Bond, I note that there's comments, and I think maybe a groundswell of feeling that we shouldn't be using town's fund money to fund private sector projects. And if I can perhaps just speak to that, because actually the government absolutely expects us to spend town's fund money on private sector projects. And in fact, specifically wants to know what our engagement with the private sector has been, what their involvement is, what their commitment to us is, and what level of match funding are they likely to provide. Now, as it stands, there are only 2 projects in our entire scheme that have the potential to attract private sector funding. One of those is Galaxy Row, and the other one is the West Park Cycle Hub. And looking at the town investment plan as a whole, without those projects, our town investment plan arguably doesn't actually meet the basic of the town's investment plan, because we will not have secured the buy-in of the private sector, and we will not have secured any form of private sector investment in our projects. So I think it was just a useful sort of reminder for the board as a whole that you don't feel that we're not allowed to spend town investment plan money co-funding private sector schemes. In fact, it's very much the opposite. That's what the government is looking for. And if we don't have any schemes like that, we will need to answer questions as to why not. I was copied into a briefing note by Councillor Pitt just before this meeting that was very much on that point. And I don't know if Councillor Pitt would like to speak to that directly.
Steve,
I would just, yes,
if I
sorry.
could just come in on that, Councillor Pitt will be, has asked if he can actually talk to us after the project presentations, and he will actually be going through that briefing note with us.
And then finally, Vaughan, just to remind you that there's been no feasibility project on enhancing Park Run. Long Eaton Park Run is one of the most successful park runs in the country. We know that. That's because it offers one of the fastest track times. We attract we have attracted participants from as far away as Wales who are looking to achieve their record park run time.
Oh yeah.
It's not actually the purpose of the town investment plan to enhance the park run. That's already a success.
Oh, I'm not.
The rationale, and of course, the rationale for the interventions in West Park are to tie in to the wider cycling initiative and to the wider attraction to the town centre. And I hope, Vaughan, that you found that useful.
Yeah, no, I'm not suggesting any connection at all with Park Run, but what is the contribution that Legacy Leisure are giving the community, if you like, is that they would run this cycle hub for no cost, basically, to the council.
They would co-fund the provision of the cycle hub, and what the cycle hub provides is the commercial end is essentially the dedicated spin room, which then basically promotes cycling as a fitness activity. And of course, that works well in the park because we don't really want people speeding around the cycle paths in West Park. We want them doing their hard workout in that kind of enclosed, in a static environment.
Yeah.
The higher element then is the element that is more family orientated and is about effectively teaching people how to cycle and doing that within the safe environment of West Park, and therefore building our entire Long Eaton cycle community, and hopefully therefore encouraging people to use cycling as a form of transport around the town, which is something we know the government is very keen to see. They want to see a promotion of sustainable transport. And by putting that project in alongside the lighting scheme within West Park, then what we actually create is a holistic project which I think has a lot of attraction to government as a funding source.
Yeah, but the Legacy Leisure contribution to the 300,000 they bid for before, then they're not contributing to the build cost.
Yes, my understanding is they match funding to the build cost. I might have the numbers wrong, Vaughan, but that's what I'm expecting to put into the bid.
They bid for British Cycling 150,000, and they were going to put in another 150,000.
Then that's what we should be doing for this process.
So we will just contribute 150,000 then, not 300.
I believe that would be a more appropriate way forward, and that would give the scheme more value. Councillor Powell wants to contribute, and I'm willing to defer to Councillor Powell.
Let's call it 150 then. Yeah.
Thanks, Vaughan. Councillor Powell.
I want to make an overarching comment because I think Vaughan was slightly disappointed about lack of support for some of West Park projects. And we all know West Park is a great site, but we want to enhance it. But for me, the overarching problem is the more we get people going there, the problem with parking at the main entrance by the leisure centre, it's grossly inadequate. And the problems that there has been on the Wilsthorpe Meadows estate and nearby is it just becomes a big car park for West Park. So we have to build in schemes to change the car parking or enhance the car parking. We know you can't go and build on floodplains and all of that, but we haven't got the room for all these massive visitors. And the park run in itself, they are very good organisers and they do their best to stop people parking, but they still park across people's driveways on the estate where I live, and those people are the ones that may be not voting for it. So please do not, Vaughan and anyone else involved, ignore the fact that the main gateway looks scruffy. It's got the recycling, the parking is inadequate, and to have anything like the park run for cycling would be just, well, it would be a disaster if it wasn't managed. And, you know, we might be healthy and we might be wanting to get exercise, but they all drive there for the park run. So please don't let us forget it. And I think the detail will be fine and the projects are fine, but I don't hear anything about the visitor parking on this project or the main project. Thank you.
Mike, that's the events car parking will hopefully solve that problem.
The car parking in front of the leisure centre is not adequate. The only way that the park run actually works is subject to it not having flooded on the events field, they are marshalled by the park run organisers to park in that car park. But you know, the more you get use of that events field for other things, the more difficulty it would be. I'm not saying don't let's do it. I'm just saying it's an absolute essential part of looking at the car parking on both sites. They're only a few hundred yards apart, but it is a problem now.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. And Vaughan, I'm sure that you will make sure that the car parking is obviously considered in the project. Keith Reedman.
Yeah, hello. About this car parking, I would be very upset to find that we're losing green space by this car park, and I'm sure that tarmacking over for car parking is not a good idea, particularly with drainage. But I've seen plenty of car parks where there is a hard surface provided with blocks, which grass is able to grow through and can drive over it in all weathers. And that, I think, is preferable to having tarmac.
Yes, good point, Keith. It's called grasscrete, I think. It allows water to soak away. You don't need so much drainage, but that's a detailed aspect that we can look at as the project progresses. I think that's me done anyway, Richard. If
okay, thank you, Vaughan. Denise Bond just had her hand up. Councillor Bond.
Hello. I wanted to flag up that I'd had a email from Long Eaton Cycles, which I have forwarded to Vaughan. So my objection isn't so much that we're starting businesses, it's that we're competing with existing businesses. So Long Eaton Cycles are really concerned that this cycle hub will directly compete with them. They would be on the path through from the park to the town centre. They have space out the front, which might be quite a good place to put secure cycling. We may want to consider involving them in discussion because they've been in the town for a really long time. They do cycle repairs. They promote cycling. I think they're kind of within the cycling community in Long Eaton. And I think that we should be including them in this discussion and giving them an opportunity to get involved rather than, you know, setting up in opposition to them as they currently see it. So can we speak to them?
Yes, good point, Denise. After meeting Steve yesterday, that was one of the results. I was going to go and talk to them. I think they're the only cycle shop in the town.
Yeah, there's another one, but it really is for electric ones.
Oh yes, I know the one. Yeah, Station Road.
Thank you, Denise. Thank you. Somebody's actually sharing their screen at the moment.
It's Andrew Mitchell. Andrew, stop sharing your screen.
Andrew, can you hear us? Steve, did you want to come in on something whilst we try and get Andrew to shut his screen down?
Yes, just briefly. Sorry, I got a lot distracted by Andrew's screen there. I think the key features I wanted to feedback on were you can't provide cycle hire in order to cycle on West Park unless you do it on West Park. So, and I know that there is concern from the local cycle shop about competition, but I don't actually see where that competition is. The comments that I saw in the comment spot was concerned about cycle maintenance, and we got some clear clarification from the project sponsor, Dave Bramall, that actually there's no need for cycle maintenance within the Cycle Hub project. So
the only thing with that, Steve, can I just say, if you've got to maintain all the cycles that you're hiring,
yes,
how
that's
can you?
entirely different from inviting people to bring in cycles to maintain them, Vaughan.
Yes, but how can you police it? How can you police it?
Well, I think that's an extremely negative and suspicious approach to what is actually a key borough council contractor.
Well, I'm just being practical. I'll talk to the cycle shop anyway, Steve, as we mentioned yesterday.
I'm very open to the cycle shop being talked to.
Yeah.
And of course, we do wish all our town centre businesses well. However, no single independent trader ought to have a monopoly over decisions that go into a town investment plan.
No. And the plus for them, the cycle shop will be very close to a green route from West Park, an enhanced green route from West Park to the town centre. So there are positives. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Vaughan. Thank you, Steve. I am very, very conscious of time. So if we're okay, please to move on to Councillor Dan Pitt to talk about the High Street.
Thank you, Richard. I've been asked to 5 minutes. So if I do 2.5 minutes presentation and we've got 2.5 minutes Q&A, then we'll get done on time. So why this project? Well, the High Street have been changing over the years, as we know. People we need people to come and dwell in our high streets rather than buy things that they can get or do what you can't get on the internet, socialize and purchase services that you cannot get on the internet, haircuts, etc. So what's the consultation say? This was November, this consultation document. We want to pedestrianize, we want to beautify and create a green dwelling space. As a consequence, where people wish to meet, greet and spend their money. This is to create footfall. So that's what we're aiming to do. This goes in line perfectly with the consultation that we asked about. 77% agreed that we should upgrade the marketplace to the current design. 79% believe we should pedestrianize. 66% believe we should move the marketplace to the corner pin. Should we have more green space? 77% in favour. Should we have public art, so beautifying it? We've got 71. Ambivalent really on Wi-Fi has been mentioned before. Secure cycle parking, that's very high, 80% want that. Widening pathways along Tomworth Road, again, good response. And create a green route, 82%. That was the most favourable. So what comes out of here is that people want us to pedestrianise, they want us to beautify, and they want us to make the High Street a green place where they can come and meet friends, they can come and meet family, they can spend their money, eat, drink, and hopefully be merry. So that's the concept. That's what we're going with the concept. The details, specific details will come after the tip. We don't need it before. So town investment plan, we need the concept. We've got that. The business case will be made up after. So what are we looking at cost wise? Well, we're looking around about just under £3.9 million. That's got 50% contingency, and we should be able to deliver on that and move forward. Thank you very much, Richard.
Thank you, Councillor Pitt. Does anybody have any questions for Councillor Pitt, please? Okay. Can I jump in then, please?
Yeah, Richard, go for it.
Yeah, you say that we don't have to have all the detail before we write the town investment plan. What kind of level of detail do we actually have to get to?
So the consultation document that we have at the moment is sufficient detail. So we've got the options, we've got the costings, we've got the type of even right down to the perhaps the type of tiles that we will be using, footways, traffic signs, all the rest of it. So we've got all that detail, but we can then tweak it. The tweaks that I'm talking about are what type of street furniture would we like? Should they be parallel or perpendicular? Should we put them in boxes? How big should these boxes be? How large should the trees be? What type of trees? This type of detail can be left until after the town investment plan when we're creating the business case. We've got a good foundation, and we've got the concept in place. I think Denise Bond has just sent a question to me or to everyone. I can't. It flashed up on the screen.
I emailed you because I didn't want to interrupt the meeting. Sorry.
Okay. I didn't see it. I think it was something about the corner pin. Does that answer your question, Richard?
It does, yeah. Can I ask, at the consultation meeting, there was some talk about Tamworth Road and even talk about pedestrianisation, stroke, trying to improve access across Tamworth Road.
Mm-hmm.
Where did we get to with that? Is there anything about that in the proposal?
So in section 5 in the proposal, heading wider opportunities, there's discussion about links to West Park, Tamworth Road, also Beaconsfield car park and Lawrence Street car park, greening these and building on the improvement of the built-in fabrics, pocket parks and Tamworth Road. But that's not in the actual project itself. So that could be included in the town investment plan as where we go next. Where's the next step? So we want to do this. This is project, let's say stage 1, phase 1. Please fund this aspect. But this is the next steps we would like to take. And we think that could be included. And that's what in the consultation document, they put this as wider opportunities to move on to perhaps a stage 2 or stage 3, moving down the line in the future.
Do you think that it's right not to put that as part of the actual project, or would you like to see that included as part of the project?
Well, originally I thought that we should include it, but then I thought about the time span, project creep. And I was thinking, right, what can we get done? What have we got the actual concept? What have we got the details? What we got the costing on? So I think that perhaps it should be included in the longer term vision, and perhaps be seen as, let's say, project 2.0 or next phase or a different project in particular. But I definitely would like to see it linked up with perhaps the wider view of the Long Eaton Green junctions, because I think looking at one without the other, if we start moving on one side without the other, then that will be difficult.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Pitt. Does anybody else have any questions on the High Street?
Denise, I didn't see your question properly. It flashed up, but I didn't read it. Something about corner pin.
Denise, do you want to ask that? Councillor Bond? Okay. Vaughan Morris, if you want to ask your question, please.
Yeah, really just asking whether the work done so far is shareable, that's all. Be interesting to see it on a plan, if there is a plan. Thanks.
I can answer the second bit. There's definitely a plan. There's a consultation document. It's 79 pages long from ACOM. If it's shareable or not, Steve is probably in the best place, Mr. Birkinshaw's best place to answer that question.
Steve.
Thanks.
Steve, could we just ask, of the consultation documents that we've got, is it possible to put almost edited, redacted versions out onto the website so that people can see some more detail of what we're actually proposing.
There's nothing confidential in the report that Councillor Pitts referred to that would need redacting. The only report, in fact, that we have that we need to redact is the Galaxy Road project, because it involves individual land values, which we're currently in negotiation on. And in fact, we'd actually need to redact that report to the extent where actually there'd be nothing left except for the, is and and. So that report is a particularly challenging. Now, in terms of getting reports onto the website, there is an issue around accessibility criteria. Lorraine, would you like to talk to that?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Steve. Yeah, there is an issue. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, there is an issue, only because now all of us in the public sector, we have to satisfy accessibility standards. I don't want to go into the detail. You can understand why we'd need to do that. So it just means that we'd have to look at that format to ensure that if we did publish them on our website, we wouldn't be discriminating against people that perhaps, you know, might be sight impaired, may not be able to access that information in a user-friendly manner. So we'll have to look at ways of getting around it. There are ways, but the more complex the data is, the more difficult it is for us to put it up, particularly things like PDF documents, because you can't manipulate those if we need to change the colour, if we need to change the font. So thanks, Steve. Yeah, thanks for dropping me into that.
I'm sorry, I should put my hand up. Councillor Bond has actually just indicated the text box, Richard, but it is on the website.
On the website, I saw that. Yeah.
But in terms of our website has been reviewed. We have made it accessible as far as we can. You are able to change font on our website. There's also the ability to get information in a different language, and it's also voice enabled. So whatever we've got, I'm sure that we can actually make sure that it meets those accessibility standards with a bit of work.
Yeah. But Lorraine, if we could publish what we can of the reports, I think that would be worthwhile.
Absolutely, Chair. It's only if it's a complex spreadsheets and Excel spreadsheets and some images that make it difficult. We'll definitely make sure that anything that we can, we'll put there. And yeah, we do have a commitment to make sure that our documents are fully accessible. And without having looked at these in detail, I can't say whether they are or they're not, but we'll get Stuart Miller, who's leading on the accessibility standards for our website, to have a look at this, and we'll publish what we can.
Thanks, Lorraine. Keith Reedman.
Yeah, hello. Councillor Pitt mentioned greening of the high street. Well, I'm totally against that. West Park is the place for trees. The high street is not the place for trees. The buildings there are obscured by trees, and I like the built environment to speak for itself, and West Park to be the place for greening. There is one other thing that I can't see how can be achieved, and that is a decent cycle route from Broad Street to the marketplace. There isn't enough width there without restricting the traffic unduly to get a cycle path and a widened footpath in there. So I wonder what arrangements have been thought about there.
Dan, do you want to address the issue of the cycle path, or is that something that the detail hasn't been looked at yet?
The detail hasn't been looked at yet, or at least not to my knowledge. And regarding the greening, I take Keith's point. I personally am all in favour of creating a green environment. Perhaps I should express something I was going to say at the end, that I was in a webinar with Harry Jones, who is the lead for Town Fund Policy lead in government, and he said explicitly that green projects get you extra points, meaning you'll get more money rather than merely mitigating against your project being a detriment to the environment. So actually, we 100% need to green the high street to be able to get the money that we're asking for.
Thank you very much for that, Dan. Denise Bond?
Hi. I have been looking at this document that was on the website. I have to say, I only saw it just before the meeting and it nearly made me late.
It's interesting read.
Yeah. There's one of the options appears to look like you want to knock down Dorothy Perkins and the bank and create a new central kind of pedestrianised square, like leading through to the market square. That was very interesting and quite ambitious. I just wanted to hear more.
Yeah, okay. That option was let's say blue sky thinking. That was, if you could really go for it, what would you do? And that's what the consultants came up with. We are not going to be doing it. It's not in the plan. It's not the chosen option. It's not the costed option. So yes, it was very interesting. It's a good bit of reading. I think it would make a great academic paper for a university course, but we're not going to be going for it.
We're not going to really go for it. That seems like a terrible shame, but okay.
No, we weren't going to be knocking down buildings, because the reason why we won't be knocking down buildings is because we want to generate footfall, and when we generate footfall, we want more businesses to be there, and we then need the buildings for them to occupy. So the last thing we want to be doing is knocking down the buildings that businesses will be occupying. So that's why we won't be going for that one.
Okay.
That's very, very well put, that Dan. Has anybody else got any questions on the high street? Okay, well, thank you very much, Dan. I think that was very well done. Can I ask, is Michael Lucking back with us now?
Yes.
Hi, Michael. We got the gist of what you were saying about Forbes Park, and I think that it was very, very succinctly put. Does anybody have any questions that they want to ask of Michael Lucking regarding the Forbes Park project? Or Michael, do you have anything that you wish to brief Tracy, because we did miss the last couple of minutes of what you said?
Yeah, the difficulty is I don't quite know where I fell out of the conversation. But I think what I'll do, I'll just repeat the bit near the end, the case for spending the money, public money on this site, and the case against. For that it's been used for over 15 years and there's a desperate shortage of land. It could be retained for HS2 compound, possibly. It would increase the chances of being able to have good access to the land currently being occupied by the low-level railway line, and purchasing the land will give us greater control over the type of industrial premises that will be constructed on it. Against, the current owner of the land appears to want to construct industrial buildings on the site anyway, and has ample funds to achieve this objective. It would be unfortunate if the land was acquired for HS2 compound and then HS2 was either postponed for many years or cancelled. Similarly, if the low-level railway line was still in the way, it would be unfortunate that we had this land and couldn't use it. A large amount of money required to purchase this site could be better spent elsewhere, possibly, to further our vision of the town. And finally, compulsory purchase is an expensive procedure, and Erewash Borough Council would have to convince a government minister that there is a compelling case for, in the public interest, this land to be acquired. And the procedure takes nearly 2 years and can involve a public inquiry. So they're the issues for and against. I've been asked to have further consultations with some board members, and I haven't heard from all yet. So really, I think I'll leave it at that. I think I've appraised the board of what the issues are, and we'll have to possibly at the next meeting come to some conclusion.
Thank you very much, Michael. I think that you've I think you've summed it up admirably. Thank you. Okay, if we could go on then, please, to Councillor Michael Powell for Long Eaton Green.
Well, you'll notice, Chair, that there's Long Eaton Green and the low-level line. With your permission, I think it would be relevant to link on to what Michael Lucking said, because the low level line is an integral part. So it'll only be a couple of minutes just to give you what the thing is on the low level line. In the vision that we agreed at the board, we wanted to avoid severance of our town. And there are two strands to the severance. One is HS2 construction itself, and the other is the lack of east-west connectivity now because of the low level line, and in particular the fact there's only two level crossings. Going on to the HS2, we still do not have any definite facts on HS2 from government, whether it's even proceeding yet. With the eastern leg, but we do know as a fact that the current hybrid bill is processing through Parliament, but it's not been accepted that the hybrid bill will go on the western leg. Our leg was supposed to have gone for the government process 2 years ago. Well, with the best will in the world, it's not likely that if our hybrid bill goes ahead, it's not likely that a spade will be turned for at least 5 years. And that's out with our town centre projects, which should be completed in 6 years. Just to remind you that a study was undertaken by Midlands Connect, which shows that the low level line crossings will cause severance, and that construction of a new connecting cord to the high level line is feasible. All we can do now is to continue to campaign to get rid of that line, and I think we all know that the cost of it would be in excess of the 25 million. The government would have to approve a higher sum, which they have done in places, but it was them that also pressurised us to do this. Where it fits in with what Michael's saying, it's looking at the very earliest of 40 to 2040 before we'll get, if HS2 comes, the project done, and that is a long time off, and the chances of getting the low level line removed quickly is not very high. It's possible but not probable in the short term, and therefore it would, in my view, the same as Michael Looking's, it would be very poorly thought of by government if we tried to buy that land when there's a willing vendor, well, willing in small letters, vendor and potential developers, because we know we want more industrial premises. So it would seem difficult to put it to government that we want to buy that land because it's such a long-term project. Do you want me to just pause on that? Because then I'll move to the, or do you want to ask questions? I'd rather move to Long Eaton Green and Derby Road.
I think it's probably sensible to ask you questions on the low level line, Michael. For me, what, in terms of Ford Park, are you suggesting absolutely not consider buying the land for a storage compound for HS2? So basically leave it available for industrial use?
Yes, I mean, it is a difficult and confidential thing, so I don't wish to discuss individual premises, but I'm saying the likelihood in a time scale of getting it ready for HS2 is so long off. Would we be seen in a good light by government and by businesses and residents holding on to a piece of land when we don't know enough about HS2's movements, whether it's even going to happen, and whether, you know, that we definitely can get rid of the low level line? Network Rail, as is always said, is a law unto itself, but we have got the evidence that says it's feasible. But I'm hedging, but I think it would not be the best of projects. And unless I've understood Michael Looking's presentation, because I struggled at the end, he's saying, you know, on the one hand, it might serve to be, which is what I always thought, it would be an ideal depot for HS2, but I didn't realise how HS2 is going to be slower and slower and slower. And you've all read your newspapers. It's all perhaps made up by newspapers, but HS2 might be moved in 2 phases and the station might be at East Midlands Parkway. That's all supposition. It's not a fact, but I think it's such a long scale time that maybe if we can get development now there, that's one of the things we should permit.
Thank you for clarifying that. Does anybody else have any questions for us, Councillor Powell, regarding the local line?
Well, that's a relief. It must be lunchtime, Chair. Shall I move on then to Long Eaton Green and Derby Road? And thank you to Colin Handley and Lorraine Poyser for doing all that analysis. But 2 of the things about the Derby Road, Long Eaton Green, highways, connectivity and so on, 2 things came right out of it. One of the highest scores for ranking was avoid the gridlock from stationary traffic on the roundabout area. And the other is, can we coordinate the pedestrian crossings on Derby Road? That was the main things. There were lots of others about cycle safety, but they were nowhere near as high as gridlock and the slowing down and the accessibility along Derby Road. In addition, there were so many individual comments. There were 181 respondents who thought they got the answers or the questions to the highways and public transport and all of those. And it's over 20 pages when you read it. That's just people saying, why don't you do this? One of the things then is those individual comments, I can tell you, will be given to the consultants to look at, because somebody, we've looked at them, but might have a great idea we've not thought of. And it's all in that report. So with no time to go through it. So I'll quickly finish the general discussions. The board itself here suggested that the most important thing about traffic flows was getting access into our town centres, because we may have the best town centres, but if you can't get there and park there or can't get there by bus, it's not going to help the viability of the town. What they didn't like, our board didn't like, was that there's rather a large traffic flow through the town, and that shouldn't be a priority in this board's mind. It might be a priority for Highways England and Derbyshire County, but for us, we want to get people into the town. And I'm going to give a bit of good news. I'm saying it with a slight trepidation, and that's with the additional highways study consultancy that will hopefully be happening. And we heard Mr. Sankey talk about where some of the money might come from. You will recall we had a company called ACOM that works with Derbyshire and ourselves, and that was a good start on solving the Green and the Derby Road project, but it needed more speciality consultancy. And Sistra is the people of choice. Fortunately, Steve Birkinshaw stole my thunder, so I'll pass on a bit on it. But they are real experts in this kind of study, and they've done a lot of work in this region as well, so they know the wider context. It is assuming that it goes ahead, it is a real time scale, very tight, about 9 weeks, with a draft report planned for early January. I suppose even better, we're moving ahead. This afternoon at 4 o'clock, there's an initial technical workshop meeting with Sistra, and I'm really pleased to say with the Senior Highways Officer of Derbyshire County Council, and it's at 4 p.m. today, and I shall be joining it. That's where we are going to set out what our requirements are and, you know, make sure that it's going to cover the things that we say. I'm personally really excited about this because I think with Sistra working with us and the good response we've had from the public wanting it done and their suggestions, we will be able to not just cure the traffic problems, you know, the gridlock, but it will look after public transport, cycling and walking, and perhaps very importantly, placemaking in the town centre. And that does include the greening of the town. Fits perfectly with what Councillor Pitt was talking about. But everybody liked it. I know I heard Keith say I don't like trees, but that will be also an integral part of this highways study and bus stops and bus routes and all the other stuff that's being done. So I think in view of the time, I will shut up, and I can hear a round of applause for that, for shutting up.
Thank you, Councillor Cow. Does anybody have any questions? Michael Locking?
Before, I haven't had a chance to look at the website, but is there any of the reports from the consultants available for us to see regarding the Green and Derby Road?
I don't think it is, because we want to add the Sistra stuff to it and see it as a combined report. If I'm wrong, Steve Birkinshaw will shout out. But I don't think we want to see the two things together.
We don't have a report, do we? The inception meeting is this evening.
No, the ACOM one.
What, the ACOM workshop?
Yeah. Do we have that for to see?
We can probably dig something out on that, but it's not a report. It was a workshop with the conclusion. So
yeah.
Steve, Oliver's got his hand up. I don't know whether he's got a comment to make on that.
Are we talking about the Long Eaton traffic study that's not specific to this, or are we talking about the workshop?
Any information that's available.
But the second one is only starting today.
Yes, I agree with Steve.
Very keen to be involved with this, and at the next meeting, I am sure that our chair will be invited, and probably Michael, because he's had a great interest and knowledge on town centre traffic and so on. I think we're a day or two early, Michael, if I may say so, but I don't know whether we've got a decent enough thing from the workshop.
No, it was really just notes. So the main report to be published will be the result of all this work that we're kicking off today.
And the final draft of that, I think, is early January, isn't it?
Yeah, we'll be able to report things to board in advance of that, yes.
But the next meeting, which will be in a couple of weeks, we will invite.
That's right, yes, indeed, the first workshop.
Maybe one or two other people, isn't that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Thank you.
Fine, thank you.
Thank you, guys. Denise?
I just wanted to ask whether reducing traffic through the marketplace is in scope for this. I know there were some ideas about widening pavement along from Broad Street down to Derby Road, and that there was an implication that traffic might be reduced as part of that. I was just wondering whether that was still in scope or ever in scope.
You can never say, no, we're not going to do another highway, because it all connects up. The main project is from really from the railway bridge next to Tesco along the Derby Road to College Street, but in particular the gridlock around what we call the green now. But it does affect Tamworth Road and how that interacts with the green. But the thing that Councillor Dan Pitt talked about was discussed about a very different layout for Tamworth Road, and I'm not sure that does cover, you know, perhaps thinking not of closing but more pedestrian priority along there and wider payments. I don't know where it stands now. Councillor Pitt, do you? May I ask?
Dan, do you want to come back on that?
Regarding the question, Michael, the Tamworth Road is seen as will go into the town investment plan, but it's not included in the High Street project. It would be something that we would look at going further. We need further evidence base. The consultants put this as a wider opportunity was the term that they used. We have not got the evidence base to be able to go further than further aspiration, perhaps in a further stage in the future. We would ask government to fund it.
Thanks for that, Councillor Pitt, because they were not particularly highways experts, were they? They were more general. I do not think, unless one of the officers tell me, we're going to study in detail whether we can make radical changes to Tamworth Road. This study will assume that there is still a certain traffic flow to Long Eaton Green, and that's part of the gridlock in both directions. Can Oliver or Steve answer whether or not we're going to include looking at radical changes to Tamworth Road? I don't think we are we?
Steve, perhaps you could comment on that. You've got your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I think the issue here is Councillor Bond's question is actually, if I can put it in these ways, sort of the wrong way around. The object of the project is not to reduce traffic. This is not a traffic reduction project.
Yeah.
The object of the project is to reassess the junctions on Derby Road and, as Keith will correct me, also the one on Nottingham Road, the Waverley Street junction, to look at the priorities of those junctions between the many different transport modes and functions that they perform. Now, as a result of that, we're hoping to get an alternative junction design. That design is what we then have to test through the transport model to see what impact it's going to have on traffic flows and whether they're going to divert to other parts of the road network, which would therefore experience more problems, because that's part of the balanced process. So it is not a traffic reduction project. We are not seeking to reduce traffic. You can't reduce traffic by altering a junction. What you can do is you can alter the priorities that traffic experience. You can increase journey reliability whilst actually increasing journey time. And when you increase reliability, that has certain impacts on journey planning. And when you alter journey time, that has other impacts on journey planning, and that tends to result in a redistribution of traffic across the entire network, which is why you then need to do a traffic modelling exercise to see what impact you have. But the objective, so the question was, is reducing traffic in scope? No, we can't reduce traffic without going around with a steamroller and destroying people's cars so they don't use the road. Okay, so it's not a traffic reduction project. It is a project about looking at the function of the junctions and seeing if they can be redesigned so that they work better, and then assessing and what impact will that have on traffic flows, journey reliability, journey time, etc.
I think if I can add, I think you all know that traffic is huge around whole of Long Eaton. It's national problem, and the other studies are done, led by Derbyshire County Council and Highways England, are a radical thing that has to be done, and that will be the only thing that might reduce traffic in Long Eaton, because look, We've got the access from the M1. We've got clog ups all around the area. When HS2 comes, you've got to cater for, if it comes, if I keep saying, the Toton access and the great number of housing sites that there are in Broxtowe, our neighbours. And traffic doesn't care whether it's Nottinghamshire or Derbyshire. It flows where it wants to and needs to. And there's a lot of development going off. And so that will increase traffic, no question. What we're doing is making what we've got work more effectively and make it easier for people to do their journeys, and in particular their journeys into our town centre. And whether that's walking, and don't ever forget that, walking and cycling and public transport. And that is something we've got to be much more conscious of. I like driving my car, we all do, just the same as the people who are getting healthy in West Park, but they all drive there. Okay. So I'm looking forward to 4 o'clock because we'll have the first chance to talk with Sister, although, as Steve said, we have worked with them over the Stanton site and looking at problems and solutions for that when it begins its construction work. When, I have no idea, but that's what we're looking for.
Thank you, Michael. Does anybody else have any questions for Councillor Powell regarding?
Can I just come back and say something to Councillor Powell?
Please.
Councillor Powell, when you're at this meeting at 4 o'clock this afternoon, is there any way you could take it upon yourself to say that while you realise it's not the first priority, any way that the impact of traffic along our marketplace could be reduced would be a massive bonus, so that they're at least aware that it would be a good thing if traffic impacted less on our marketplace?
The first thing we're going to do, if I may answer this afternoon, I understand we're going to talk about 3 options for trying to reduce the delays coming in and out of our town centres, and that's the design of the green area and also the fact that the traffic queues up back all the way along Derby Road from, well, much further, but from College Street, and it's mainly because of people coming in and out side roads, and it's because of those necessary pedestrian crossings. I could always ask, but I don't think we can go beyond the remit that's going to be specified to them, because extending the remit extends the bill. And you heard the problem. We've got to be a little bit tight with the spending. We haven't got unlimited money, and it's not my fault that traffic planners do cost a lot of money. And we haven't got the staff in Erewash to do this kind of work, and Derbyshire County Council struggle so with their own staff. We just don't have these infinite budgets to do it. And let's try and solve the problem that people want. And I'll remind you what they said. We want to avoid gridlock, and we want to coordinate the pedestrian crossings. Then there's 1,000 comments about how you might do it, but that's the remit. And I don't think we're going to start saying, can we reduce traffic coming along Tamworth Road? I don't think we can. Okay, we can't. I mean, in this project, I mean.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. If there are no other questions, I think you did, that was very, very well done. Thank you, Councillor Powell. If there are no other questions, could we please move on to Ian Viles on the commercial units in the stable block? Over to you, Ian.
Okay, thank you. I'll whip through given the time. So the plan is to develop the stable block in such a way that it contributes and complements the existing enterprise infrastructure in the town, whilst respecting the building's history and context. It's currently used as storage. The plan is to convert it in such a way that it would provide approaching 8,000 square feet of small business units in a mix of sort of workshop studios and office spaces, aimed primarily at starter and sort of early years businesses. Want to try and do that in a high quality, flexible way that's also sustainable. So what we've done so far, is what the council team are working on, is building upon previous thinking and plans that were developed for previous bids. And our next steps really are to review those designs and costs to make sure that they're still relevant, robust, to review market conditions and expectations of demand going forward, and also review the survey comments and build that into those plans as well. So that is broadly where we are. Happy to take on that.
Okay, has anyone got any questions for Ian, please? Okay. Ian, can I come in? You say it's a mixture of workshop and office space.
Yeah.
What kind of size will the workshop spaces be?
There'll be round about, there are potentially 4, which I think is on the western wing. They would be around about 400 square feet, I think. So really aimed at the sort of, I kind of put the sort of artisan artist, that sort of business model. So not anything particularly heavy or noisy because of its position. But we have got some potential there because that part of the building is got a very high ceiling height, and would also respect the existing structure of the building.
Okay, thank you. Are they in shared services, so shared toilets, shared counters?
I would. My recommendation would be, if possible, no, because that adds a significant ongoing revenue cost of running a building if you've got those shared facilities. Okay. So wherever possible, each unit has its own facilities, if possible, that we need to look at.
All right, thank you. Has anybody else got any questions for Ian on the stable blocks? Okay, thank you, Ian.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Hart, just in time.
Yeah, not on the stable block, as we're at the end of the meeting. Can I just suggest that we record our thanks for all the work and effort that the Stephen, Oliver and the planning team, and Lorraine and Colin and the consultation team, you know, they really have put a lot of work into this and been working at full speed. So I think we ought to record our thanks in the minutes if we could, Chairman. Thank you.
I definitely second that, Councillor Hart. I think they've done an admirable job. Vaughan Morris.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. All I was going to ask Ian about was the questionnaire response, but I've just looked myself, and it was quite a high percentage for the stable block project, 80 and 90%, something like that.
Yes.
So that sounds good. Lovely. Thanks.
Thank you.
One last one. Can I, Richard, just ask you one more? You know, this 750,000 advance funding had to be spent this year. Can any of it be carried over if we don't spend it?
Steve, is that something that you want to, or sorry, Ian, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Our understanding is it should be spent by the 31st of March. That's the understanding at the moment. Whether there's any future scope to carry over, we don't know. But the assumption was, if you remember the letter which went off, we would spend it by the 31st of March. I would like to think government would give us some flexibility if we're well progressed, for example, on certain schemes. They'll give us some flexibility, but I have to say, you know, the government said they were asking us to spend money by the 31st of March. So that's a strict rule. That's what we're working to. But as I say, sometimes they do show some flexibility if your plans are very well advanced.
Thanks, Ian.
Thanks, Ian. Thank you.
Councillor Hart.
Yeah, just we had sort of had conversations about this because some of the complex work, and particularly with the Galaxy bid, could take us over. But I think that the feeling was that if we put something to the minister, and I think Maggie was well pleased to support it, that we could say that things were so far advanced, but because of the complexity, it may run over, and ask if they would consider. So if the worst came to the worst, you know, that was what we would make the plea for. So, you know, it is a possibility, and I know Maggie was quite supportive of that and was willing to speak to the Secretary of State to see what we could do. But I'll leave that to probably Maggie will fill a little bit more in. Okay.
Thanks for clarifying that, Councillor Hart. Maggie, do you want to just make a comment on that, please?
Well, just to say, yes, as we said before, I'm very willing to do that. We just need to get the right time in. So probably working together will work out when there's an appropriate time. So we'll say how far we've got and to justify why we need that bit extra time to spend the money. So it's getting our ducks in a row. So our case is a strong case.
Thank you, Maggie. James Gregory.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And just onwards from Councillor Hart's thanks to the officers, which I very much want to strengthen. But actually, as important, I think as a board, we should be at this stage and possibly at the end of most meetings, asking the officers, as they are the ones who essentially are going to be putting our bid together, are they content with progress, and is there any more specific support they need from this board?
James, that's a very, very good point. Steve, are you probably best to answer that for us, please?
I always feel like you're putting me on the spot on project management. I'm confident that we will get the bid in and on time. We won't have a lot of time to spare. That I think that's for certain. Looking forward in terms of the project plan, the next board meeting, we probably need to consider what the capital allocation to each project is likely to be, and to discuss project prioritisation. And I think that would be very useful if the board can help give us a clear steer on that process. But that's where we need to be by the next meeting. So I think I can encourage all project champions to think carefully about how we can get to that point.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Vaughan?
Yeah, just quickly, the car park in the events field at West Park, the figure is roughly about 600,000. I don't know what the chance would be, but if money had to be spent this financial year, I should think a bit of that, quite a lot of that could be spent.
If I can stop you there, Vaughan, it's none.
Yeah.
Because it's none, because the government set out in its letter to us what we could spend the money on, and it was Galaxy Rover, High Street, and the Bridges project. So we've got to bear in mind, when the government give us money, both the money they've given us now and the money that we're asking them for from the town investment plan, we can't just go and spend it on what we like. Yeah. We'll be given it to spend on specific outcomes. Okay, so I've been really, I think it's a really useful point, Vaughan, to re-emphasise.
Yeah,
this entire process is not about the government saying, "Here's 25 million. What would you like to spend it on?" That is not what is going on. What is going on is the government saying, if you can make to us a strong case that you've got a powerful vision for your town and how it can be a better place, and you can identify specific capital projects that will help the town to get to that destination, then we are willing to be your partners to take you there. But it is not about pet projects or, you know, what people would like to see. It's about what's going to make a difference, and that's what we have to be focused on in terms of putting together this town investment plan.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, just a thought.
Thank you, Steve. Denise, you've got your hand up. Councillor Bond.
I'd like to firm up a date by which we're going to get some more information sent to us on Galaxy Row, because if we're going to be making a decision at the next meeting about how much we're going to spend on things and so on, we need that information in advance so that we can make that decision. So I just wanted to be assured that we will be getting it in the next week or so.
Denise, I think it's probably, I doubt very much that James Gregory is in a position that's changed from where he was an hour ago. So I think it's probably best if you wanted to talk to James and myself outside of the meeting when he's got some more information. James?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Bond. Keen to stress again, Galaxy Row, as has been said, not by me, but other board members several times this morning. Galaxy Row is a complex project. We are in complex negotiations with a number of landlords. We have to, yes, I agree that the board needs more information. We are not in a position at this time to give that information, but I do agree that information is required to enable board members to hopefully offer their support. One final point on Galaxy Row, we have to consider it in line with Steve Birkinshaw's comment 2 minutes ago. It is any development at Galaxy Row is a catalyst for future improvements, future good things for our town. Yes, we know it's a costly project. We know it has a negative value. Of course, we will provide information on that, but we can only provide, I'm only going to provide information with the officer's support once we are confident in that information.
Thank you very much for that, James. What I would like to do for one final thing for the meeting is Councillor Dan Pitt was in a webinar earlier this week with Harry Jones, Town Funds Policy Lead at MHCLG, and I would like Dan just very, very briefly, please, just to give us a resume of some of the important information that he picked up there. So over to you, please, Dan.
Thanks, Richard. So the positive news is that where we're going and the projects that we have seem highly likely to be looked on favourably by Harry Jones and his team. The weakness that the 40 tips town investment plans that have already been submitted are unfortunately a weakness that we already know about, which is private sector involvement. And as Steve Birkinshaw alluded to earlier, that this is something they want to see in the plan. How much engagement we've had with the private sector, what stage are we at, how does the environment fit into the wider context of Long Eaton and our plan, how will it provide public sector growth? That's key. So we actually, the investment we're putting in, they want to see private sector growth, and how partnerships were built on previous initiatives. So how have these partnerships been built over the long term? What has the council been doing? So that was very good. We should look at Blackpool. That was the exemplar. They said that was head and shoulders above the rest regarding their TTIP, which I was informed was mostly written in-house, but with support with consultants. And we should definitely make the tip our own, unique. It must be ours, not Blackpool's or Stapleford's or anything like that. Green projects get extra points, which I've already mentioned earlier, but pathways, lighting, cycleways, green homes, which we're doing. So we tick all of those. There is potential, and it's only potential. So this was said as in, we're working on it. You may not get it, but we're working on it. So there may be extra revenue funding for projects. Maybe they're looking at MHCLG, the government department, are looking to be able to assist delivery partners. How will they allow us to actually get these projects done? assist us with identifying further private sector support, and there may be additional capacity funding for the business cases to be brought forward. As in most boards, like we have spent the original money already on all of the projects. So there may be more money coming forward. The extra revenue funding, if it does come along, will be pump priming, so to speak, and it has to be demonstrated with evidence how this would lead to greater impact and greater growth. That's it in a nutshell. I think that's all I will say, Richard.
Thank you very much for that, Dan. But I do think that the points raised by Dan are things for us all to consider, especially for the project champions when they're going through the individual projects. Now, that is just about it for today. If we could go on to date for the next meeting, please, Angelica.
Hi, yes, that's set for Friday the 18th of December at 9:30 a.m.
Okay, well, thank you all very much. I think we've got through a huge amount of work today. Thank you very much to the officers for all of their hard work, and especially for bringing all the project champions up to speed on the individual projects. And thank you obviously to all the project champions for all the hard work that they've done. Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to draw the meeting to a close, please.
Right, if we can stop the stream, please, now, and confirm that it's ended.